know if I'm going to have interruptions because of the way I'm broadcasting, which is pretty lo-fi. Basically, yeah. The setup's bad, so I might be interrupted, in which case I do apologize, but I'm going to try and get through as much of this chapter as possible before something happens. I've had a lot of tech issues today, and so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't even know if I'm actually streaming right now. There's always that. So we'll see. Just bear with me here. So yeah, and also again, once I'm done providing, I'm actually on. Hopefully I'm on. It's been a long day with more tech problems to come, I'm sure. Alrighty. So, like I said, I will start again with a chapter 10. It's called Betrayal. That's one of the things I'm noticing about this book is that I think we're going to dump all the chapter names because they seem a little too leading, and I'm not happy with the fact that it's really pretty hit you over the head. So that's fine. Without further ado, here is chapter 10. The fact was certain: the army of Ascos had to pull back, at least until they had time to recruit and train more men. They'd been sitting on the grassy hill country next to the battlefield for over a week now, and forage parties had to go further and further afield. If you'll permit, lady, we'll send out bigger scouting parties than usual. At least they can warn us if Narnish resumes his advance. At best, they can hinder him by ambushing his foraging parties and the like. Yes, do that. And Il Coriat? Yes, lady? Tell me honestly, can we hope to win this war? Oh yes, this battle was a bloody murdering hell of a fight, and if we've lost heavily, bear in mind that Narnash has lost even more heavily, and has to bring his own reinforcements from further away than we. Our people have had few pitched battles recently. Our commanders will have learned from this fight, and will train to avoid mistakes we've made. It occurs to me that Gockel might benefit from some tactical advice. He held up a forestalling hand. I'm not finding fault, mind. He made good choices this time. Another time, though, there might be better choices. I see. I'm sure we could convince him of the need. Lucy looked at the man whom the servant escorted into her presence. He was tall and slender, dark-haired, being overtaken by gray, a long, craggy face, and eyes that looked into a bleak future. Lord Discoman Radishan, the servant announced. Welcome, Lord Disikoman. Very welcome indeed. He nodded brusquely. You know, lady, in ordinary circumstances I'd have cut off my hand before I joined you. Very honestly spoken, Lord Discoman. His mouth quirked up in a grimly humorous smile. I've little time for courtly manners and bowing and mouthing polite phrases to people who disgust me thoroughly. I'm sure by now you've heard from your own sources what my messenger told you? Yes, I sympathize with your loss. His eyes turned fierce. Do you indeed? I wonder. Do you know that Folsedon was the only son of my late wife, who died bringing me into the world? Did you know that I could see her face in his more clearly every year? He clamped his mouth shut. She could see he hated himself for bearing his grief for her to see, but could think of nothing to ease him or comfort him. Her agents had informed her that Disikoman had doted on his son, because the boy had resembled his mother. His doting, though, had not led to ignoring nor being unforgiving of errors, but rather in training the young man well. The only safe thing to say was, "You will serve in my army then, Lord Disick?" As she said it, she realized how brusque and selfish it sounded. He merely nodded. "I will serve you until the overthrow and death of Narnish." "Very good. My commanders will wish to be assured that you will follow orders and that you are not likely to take your men out of battle in line for some wild quest for vengeance." She saw him stiffen. "I put it that badly, did I?" "Lady, I could have thrown myself and my men away the other day in an attempt to charge into the rear of Narnish's cavalry reserve. I did not, because I thought I could do more damage to him if I attacked at a time and place where I would be alive to assist again afterward." Lucy nodded. "Your pardon, Lord Disick. I ought not to have insulted you so. Might I ask you assist Lord Elcoriat to the train of our troops? Our phalanx, in particular, is in need of drill and practice." "A phalanx of Ascos? Well, we will do what we can." There seemed to be a further unspoken, "but don't expect any miracles." It was Lucy's turn to feel insulted, but she did not let it show. As the servant ushered Lord Disick out, she considered that it mattered less that he maintained one's prejudices against Ascos than he was willing to help. It would no doubt be best if he were to give advice to Elcoriat and his commanders, who could then pass it on to the drill masters, stripped of all expectations of inherent Ascos inability. The archer in nondescript clothing watched Narnish's army from a clump of brush. It ought to have been nigh impossible to escape from the guard tent, but in the confusion inherent in the withdrawal of the army of the king, not my king anymore, he managed it. He'd slipped to the battlefield under the cover of night and rearmed himself. Dagger, short sword, bow, and motley of arrows, which would do for now, though he couldn't trust them as much as the ones he'd fletched for himself. He picked up a few coins, too, from the people no longer in need of them. He didn't feel like robbing the dead, but sometimes a man had to do things to stay alive. He hadn't loaded himself down. He would travel light and fast. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do. Best would be to look down the shaft of a drawn arrow at Narnish, but that was unlucky. Maybe he'd find a way and a place to hurt the bugger, though. Lucy found time to talk to Gockel as well, in the privacy of her tent, with the army sounds around them and the smells of grass and trees and cooking fires blowing in. "The talisman works better than we'd hoped, then?" "Oh, it works for true and sure. Not something I'd want to do every day." "It was that bad, then?" "Bad enough. It's not the way I'd prefer to fight." "You won't give it up, though?" "Oh, I made the bargain. I'll hold to it. But I hope you won't be asking me to use it for every little skirmish." She shook her head. "No, definitely not. The battle is bad enough with the usual weapons of men. The talisman seems worse somehow." He shook his head in agreement with her. "It's the kind of thing," she went on, "that I'd want to keep out of the hands of Narnish and his sort. They'd use it in every skirmish and use it to punish towns, villages, or territories that displeased them in any way. Can't you imagine that?" Yes, I could. I wonder sometimes if Herzorio thought of the danger of it falling into the wrong hands when he had the thing made. King Narnish had commandeered quarters in a rich merchant's brick house. The sounds of the city of Helifriad had come faintly to him in the inner room where he listened to his advisors. "Our cavalry is in sad shape, Highness. We have 3 contingents wiped out completely, all men either killed or wounded, most horses dead. We have 5 others so battered they had to be absorbed into other contingents. The morale of our horse is universally low. Worse, the cavalry of Ascos has shown themselves to be far better than expected. And those mortar-eaten archers were We're too wicked for comfort. What of the phalanx? They're peeved, Highness. They think they could have won the battle on their own, but for lack of support from the light troops and the cavalry. Not having suffered the effect of the Talisman themselves, they have little patience with the cavalry, which they see as having let everyone down over a little wind. I see. Any efforts being made to round up the light troops that broke and fled? Yes, Highness. We've recovered a fair number of them so far. A few more every day. Good. Haul 1 in 100 of those for execution. By Mother Goddess's belly, I'll make more of them afraid of me than Ascos. There is a further difficulty, Highness. We are low on supplies, and there's little in the local area. The country we marched through was picked clean. He carefully avoided saying that this had been done on the king's orders. Send foraging parties further afield. Sending foraging parties further afield is presenting dangers. The local people have heard that you did not destroy Lusomi's army, and therefore believe the converse, that you have been defeated. They have become sullen and uncooperative, hiding their grain and cattle, and even occasionally ambushing foraging parties. The army has to be moved then? That would seem to be the best measure, Highness. Our reports say that Ascos are in little better shape than we, and are in no condition to pursue us and seek another battle. That's fine enough. But neither can we stay in the field indefinitely. There are crops to be managed back home. Can we whip our army back into shape for another try this year? We might, Highness, but I wouldn't want to be the one to promise it for certain. Gockel was at little loose ends. The army was training, drilling, foraging for food, and he had no place in all that. He talked to El Coriat, and the upshot of that session was that Gockel just didn't know what might be more important on a battlefield. Therefore, if there were a battle anytime soon, an experienced officer would accompany Gockel to give him advice and guidance. The actual choice would still be up to him, the man who held the talisman. He had borrowed a scroll from Lucy, A History of the Land by Rubelio Hagarananad, who might just be a famous person, but since he had never heard of the man, he couldn't be sure. However, even reading history, however fascinating, could only take up so much time, and most of the troops were dispersed wildly for foraging, so it was hard to find a good game. Even then, the men who would no longer be there were just a little too present for Gockel. One of the longtime soldiers had told him, "Look, it happens. A soldier gets used to remembering the ones who are gone and then letting them go. You get too tangled up in the memories of who's died already, and sometime you'll be a little slow on the parry, and it'll be a sword in your own guts." Which Gockel recognized as good advice, but still, he wasn't a soldier, wasn't likely to be, and it was a difficult matter for him to get around. Sometimes his elder brother haunted him. "Your pardon, sir?" He turned. It was a high-ranking servant from the look of his clothing. "Yes?" "Lord Gockel, my master, Dalthorio Hanavoto, wishes to speak to you." As Gockel at once went wary, the man continued, "Lord Dalthorio bids me tell you he realizes that relations between the two of you have not been amicable. But since you are going to be on the same side, you ought to be friends. He would invite you to take a cup of wine and a meal with him this evening." Gockel might have sent the man off, but he had come to know how important Dalthorio was to Lucy's war. Best at least attempt to make an accord. "When does Lord Dalthorio wish to see me?" "He invites you to come immediately. If you will accompany me, I have mounts for us over here." It wasn't a long ride. The Ascos army had to disperse for foraging. But given Dalthorio's importance to the campaign, Gockel was not surprised that Hanavoto stayed near the main headquarters. Delthorio's contingents covered several brushy hillsides, and the air was full. The air was full of the scents of men, horses, crushed grass, and flowers. Oh boy. Yeah. Sentences, awkward sentences. Bear with me. Delthorio's tent was a fancy pavilion, though Gockel didn't hold any bad thoughts about Lucy's own tent. It was only a little less fine. Delthorio's, for some perverse reason, annoyed him. Delthorio gave him a polite greeting, although not an effusive one. Gockel had expected a little more. In fact, it seemed the Lord was forcing himself to be welcoming. No surprise, Gockel considered, since I'm feeling much the same myself. Welcome, Gockel. I'm glad you were willing to come. We're on the same side, fighting the same war. It would be better if we were at least civil to each other. I'm willing to put aside all grudges, Gockel agreed, noticing again how short the man was. Lady Lusomi needs us all to work together. Good. Come into my tent. We'll have a cup of wine before we dine. The servant held the fringed tent flap open so that you could enter. 2 glasses of wine were already poured out. Gockel was concentrating so hard on minding his manners that this did not strike him as unusual. Real glass goblets on a military campaign, however, struck him as in keeping with Delthorio's personality. The servant picked up one glass and handed it to his master, then picked up the other and handed it to Gockel. Shall we drink to success, then? The little man was smiling, unfeigned as far as Gockel could tell. To success. Gockel drained his glass, as Delthorio drank down his own. He copied the Lord's gesture in handing the glass back to the servant, and saw Delthorio looking at him fixedly, as if watching for something. Have I made a mistake? Then, he wondered. Dizziness swept over him. He made a step towards Delthorio, raising his hands to strangle the man, and realized that his hands barely moved. His foot only moved enough to throw him off balance. He felt himself hit the floor, and then felt nothing more. Disick spotted the Ascos brat for the 5th time in 2 days. It was the same boy, brown curly hair, impudent smile, always lurking behind some bush, rock, or tree in the hilly country where Disick's force had camped. He knew it was the same boy, though some of his people professed not to be able to tell one Ascos sprat from another. The boy never tried to steal anything, never committed any mischief, and was too quick to slip back away when any soldier tried to approach him. He seemed to be 8 summers old, still sure the world was a fine place and everybody loved him. His hanging around annoyed Disick, so the Wentz Lord gave orders. On the 6th time the boy showed himself, Disick waited for a bit, then stepped towards the boy's lurking place. As usual, the boy vanished. Disick returned to his seat in front of his tent. Shortly thereafter, 3 scouts came in, one clutching the boy by the scruff of the neck. There was a bruise on the boy's forehead. The Lord looked up at the scouts. I ordered you to do him no harm. By the Mother Goddess's toenails, we didn't. He ran when he saw us, tripped on a root, and banged his head against a tree. Disick looked at the man a moment longer, then nodded. Very few of his men would lie to him. He turned his attention to the boy. Well, boy, one lesson you must learn about scouting. Stay aware of one who might be on your back trail. Who are you? With an 8-year-old defiance, the boy said, I'm Delphio Hastolikad, heir to the lordship of Askerlovoy. Oh boy. Big title for a small boy. Do you know who I am? Yes, of course. You're Lord Disick Redishin, who has joined Lady Lusomi against the bloody Narnish. And nobody's warned you that I eat small boys? Huh, that's silly. I've seen you preparing chickens and pigs and sheep for your table. You're not at all afraid of me then? Why should I be? If you did anything to me, my ma would fetch you such a clout. That caused him to smile a bit. No, whatever else it might be, I don't make war on small boys. Why do you lurk around my camp? Surely you must be more interested in your own people's army. Oh, I've seen 'em, but yours are more interesting. You're different. As if the difference is the most intriguing thing in the world. Likely for an 8-year-old, it was. What had Volsodon been like at 8? No, not like this boy. Much more serious. The pain was still too near. He felt his grief, saw the wary look come over the boy's face. Well, would you like to work in my camp? Sort of an underpage? When he'd had the scouts bring the boy in, his intent had been to scold him and let him go. This was not at all what he intended to say, but he realized at the same time that he did mean it. We'd have to ask my ma. What about your father? He's gone away. He died in battle. The boy's brow furrowed, and Disick could tell, almost as if it was written there, that the boy had been through all this. Just bear with me here while I do some more marking. Had been through all this, didn't quite understand death, but was working on accepting the fact that his father would never come home. I see. Could you ride on my horse in front of me on the way over to talk to your mother? Of course. The young voice was full of scorn. I rode with my dad lots of times. Good. Then you can be my guide. He called for his horse to be saddled, and then chatted with Adelphio while he waited. While he waited. Do you intend to be a soldier when you're grown? Of course, I have to. I'm the heir. It sounded like something he'd been told sufficient times that he believed it, though he might not comprehend all that the notion meant. I see. What sort of fighters do you train in these parts? Mostly mounted archers, but we have a few pikemen. But Dad says our phalanx is nowhere near as good as the bloody Narnish's. Or yours, I suppose. Interesting. Were you trying to learn how to make your phalanx better by watching my troops? Oh, yes. That's what I thought I would do. Disick could tell that the boy thought nothing of the sort until just now. But he didn't call Adelphio on it. Little boys were often like that, trying to impress adults by agreeing with them about something that sounded important. Well, we must see what can be done. Ah, here's my horse. Up you get. He was pleased to see that the boy had showed no fear about mounting the horse. Very likely, then, he had ridden with his father. Lots of times. The village itself, the chief's seat, was only 3 miles away. A fairly easy walk for a boy. Disick expected the boy's mother to be some young woman barely a third his age. He was surprised, therefore, when the boy called, Ma, look at me! And one woman, in the knot of women, who looked over was no child, but plainly a mature woman. She might be more than half his age, and she was no beauty, though she was by no means a plain woman either. She did not look like one who'd used a combination of looks and connivance to achieve her status, but rather demonstrated ability and concern. He swung down from the saddle and lifted the boy. Now, Adelphio, introduce me to your mother. In a fairly proper fashion, Adelphio said, Mother, this is Lord Disick Rudishin, who is serving Lady Lusomi. Lord Disick, this is my mother, Lady Junomi Hastolkad, region of this territory. Lady June. Oh my goodness, words. Yeah, all the names are a little more challenging. They aren't horrible. If you read them, they're fine. But trying to say them out loud is a whole nother matter. Lady Junomi looked Disickelman up and down. Welcome, Lord Disickelman. We'd hoped to see you at some time, but all we've seen are your servants and aides telling us, Lord Disickelman requests so many measures of grain, so many sheep, so many hogs, and fodder for so many horses. He felt a flash of anger at this woman, this Ascos woman, who should chide him about manners. Then he realized he really had been at fault. He had taught Fulsidon better. What excuse had he? I apologize, Lady Genomi. I fear I have allowed the death of my son to turn me into a sour old man. He saw the shadow come over her face and realized he'd reminded her of her husband's so recent death. He was about to apologize again when she spoke. Yes, well, we've all had our losses, haven't we? But welcome anyway. Will you come inside and take a cup of our new apple wine with us? He would have refused, but having had his bad manners chided once, however mildly, he nodded. Yes, that would be very nice. Very well. Delphi, you come with us. You can have a cup of cider. Highness, would you pour us a cup of wine? One of the other women bowed and went inside. Yes, an intelligent woman. She saw the boy come riding in on my saddle bow, and knew that, at the very least, she'd want to have him near once she'd spoken with me. If only to warn him that Wen's lords eat small boys. He wasn't sure what he would have to chat about with a woman until lately an enemy. Would he be forced to continue his rudeness by simply telling her the reason for his visit? He was grateful when she took the matter out of his hands by asking, Have all the supplies been satisfactory, Lord Disickelman? Being so far removed from what was going on through his mind, this question took by surprise. Oh, very satisfactory, thank you. Oh, Disickelman, didn't you just this morning complain about the horse fodder was scant? And tell me, do our Highland sheep compare to those of Wentz? Which led to a discussion of breeds of sheep and their relative merits, and how sheep bred for warmer lowlands, though fatter, did not thrive well in the less salubrious foothills and mountains. And they both knew their subject intimately. There was scarce a lord in all of Wentz Ascos who did not intimately know what his territory produced. As for sheep, Disickelman himself had turned out every year at lambing time, along with the least of the shepherds. He had heard it said that there were lords in other lands who did little but sit in their halls, caring only that their rents were on time. How could they know who could afford what, if they themselves knew nothing of sheep except that they turned up dressed on the table from time to time? It was even more interesting that a recent widow knew her topic so well. One would have thought she would manage the house, leaving everything else to her husband. But she knew as much as he, in her way. The conversation might have continued longer, but for the fact she finally said, Well, Lord Disickelman, I am certain you did not come all this way to discuss sheep with me. He felt a little quirk of something in his mind. Sadness that the visit must be cut short? He went on with the reason for his coming. Lady, your boy has been hanging about my camp. Realizing at once this was beginning to sound like a complaint, he held up a forestalling hand. I remember about small boys too often. If you tell them not to do something, they'll find it much more interesting. Fulsidon rarely did. I wish to keep him out of trouble. If he continues to hide around my camp, he might get hurt by accident. If he comes openly, at my invitation, he'll be safer. If you agree, I propose to employ him in a number of tasks, running errands, that sort of thing. In return, he gets to come in, see what we're doing, ask 1,000 questions, and keep out of most mischief. She frowned. It seems a bit much for a boy of only 8 summers. He heard the boy about to object, but he responded quickly. Lady, the boy need stay no longer than he wishes. He will sleep here nights, and if he wearies of the whole affair, he only need come and tell me so. And if battle comes, battle is no place for a boy. He heard Adelphio snort. If we go to battle, he goes home. And perhaps I will have to lock him up securely until the battle is done? Well, my lord, it doesn't seem unreasonable. When would he begin? Well, the day is near over. He can come to us tomorrow after sunup. I will see to it the guards are expecting him. He turned to Adelphio. Come down the trail openly tomorrow. No sneaking through the bush. You are reporting for duty, not scouting on an enemy. He was pleased to see the boy straighten and look serious. Yes, lord. He was willing to wager, though, that his seriousness would not last. Gockel woke up groggily. The surface on which he lay, along with the heaving, jouncing ride, told him that he was in an ox cart. Why? He seldom rode in an ox cart, save if he were ill, and the trainmaster was a generous fellow. Who was he working for? Then he took into account that his hands were bound behind him, and there was a gag in his mouth, and other thoughts returned to him. Delthorio! The little lord was having his vengeance. He'd have thought Delthorio would make away with him at once and tip him into the hole somewhere. Was he hauling Gockel off somewhere? To kill him slowly? He felt the talisman in his chest. Well, the little horror hadn't taken that. Of course, even if he had, it would do him no good. He'd have to explain to Lucy how the whole thing had come into his care, and Gockel had disappeared. He'd just have to wait and be ready. Given any chance to fight, he might force them to kill him quickly, if that was the only choice he had. Opportunities were scant. The first time they brought him out of the cart, they said, "You can relieve yourself here. We'll loose your hands, but don't touch the gag. I reckon one of us can lay a spear shaft across your head before you come close to undoing it." When he was done, they bound him up again, and the spokesman said, "We're going to take the gag out and let you drink a bit of broth. Don't try to say anything. You speak a word, spell or no, one of us will get you in the gut with a spear butt." Won't kill you, just make you wish it had for a while. This left him wondering. You didn't feed someone, however sparsely, if you were just taking him off somewhere to kill him. After the third day's travel, it occurred to Gockel that Delthorio may be turning him over to Narnash. The battle may have been a near thing, Gockel knew, a very near thing, despite the talisman. He could see the little lord leaving Lucy for the man who'd had the bigger armies. To be sure of his welcome with bloody Narnash, he would bring along the talisman and its wielder as well. This was all guesswork, of course. Bound and gagged in the bottom of a covered ox cart, smelling of all the cargoes it had carried in its lifetime, he had no way to tell what direction they were traveling. So he's not surprised on the fifth evening to hear the common language spoke with the harsh accents of the Wents. The guards who had watched over him on the trip were there to haul him out of the cart. You belong to King Narnish now. His guards know all about you. The king will want you alive. But a spear butt won't kill you. Just remember that. Enjoy your stay with the king. With raucous laughter at this joke, they left him in the company of some guards who looked less friendly than Delthorio's men had. Their commander said, "Well, he's told you everything important. King Narnish wants to see you now. You willing to walk in on your own legs, or do we bash you and dump you in front of him like a bag of turnips? Not if you'll walk without making trouble." There didn't seem to be much alternative, so he nodded. The guards marched him into the king's presence, a small room and somewhat crowded. Even on a campaign trail, there were those who made sure they were present in the king's audience hall, if only so that the king could see them agreeing with his every whim. So with aides reporting on the scattered army's status, messengers with word from the capital about decisions someone must take, decisions which people thought best to leave to the king himself, no matter how far away he was, then add to these hangers-on, and the chamber was filled. Gockel was aware, as he walked into the king's presence, that Delthorio, near the king... Wait. Oh my goodness, that's not right. Gockel was aware, as he walked into the king's presence, that Delthorio stood near the king, but Delthorio carried no weapons. So the king didn't quite trust the little traitor, did he? Well, you are the ox driver. You are the ox driver who bid fair to destroy my army? No, I don't expect you to speak. I don't want you to speak until I can bring in Dr. Gobnash to see to it your talisman can't harm us. Now, Lord Delthorio assures me that you are the one he claims you to be. But he would, wouldn't he? It would hardly do to bring in some person or other or make a claim if it could not be substantiated. Would be in trouble for him. And you don't look like some half-wit duped into playing the part. Not if you are that one. He considered shaking his head just to make trouble for Delthorio, but it didn't seem feasible. They'd keep him around for Dr. Gobnash anyway, who would likely be able to tell the truth, and all Gockel would likely get out of it was someone taking it out of his hide afterward. He nodded. Aha! The king said triumphantly. So this most deadly talisman doesn't protect you against everything. Good, good. Guards, stash him away and keep him safe for Dr. Gobnash. And that's the end of the reading for tonight. So, yeah, it looks like it's getting interesting. Like I was saying before, though, I'm going to have to take out all the chapter titles because they aren't. Oh, and look. I was blipping in and out, so that's kind of fun. But I hope you enjoyed my reading for tonight, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. I hope you were able to get through the whole entire thing. I'm not sure what my stream was like tonight because it seemed a little higgledy-piggledy. So, I don't know. I will post this all up and I will talk to you again tomorrow. So, have a good night, and until then.